The sky over Valera's homeworld was always purple, soft like lavender, but today it looked heavy. Thick clouds formed over the high towers of her family's estate, and inside, everyone waited in fear. The house of Valera, once proud and wealthy, had fallen. Valera stood in the center of the tribunal hall, surrounded by armored alien guards. Her long silver dress dragged behind her. Her hands were chained, not because she was dangerous, but because she was the payment. A cold voice echoed from the tall chair at the end of the hall. It belonged to Lord Xeron, the head of the debt tribunal. House Valera has failed to repay its debt, he said without emotion. The failure of the trade alliance with the humans has brought loss to the council. Valera's mother cried out, "Please, she is only a girl." Lord Xeron raised a hand to silence her. The law is clear. When a family cannot pay in gold or land, they must pay in bloodline. Valera looked up. Her golden eyes burned with confusion and fear. "What do you mean?" she asked softly. The hall was silent for a moment. Then Lord Xeron spoke the words that changed her life forever. "You will be given to a human. As a bride." Gasps echoed through the room. Valera's knees became weak. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it would break her chest. She wanted to scream. She was nobility, an heiress. Now she was being sold like a servant. "No. No. Please," she whispered, tears starting to run down her cheeks. But the guards moved toward her. "Prepare her for transport," they said. Her mother ran forward to stop them but was held back. "You can't do this," she shouted. Valera was dragged away. She looked back one last time at her mother's face, full of pain and helplessness. She didn't know who the human was. She didn't know what planet she would be taken to. All she knew was that she had no choice. She was a tool to pay off a debt that wasn't even her fault. The next morning, she was locked inside a glass pod. The pod was made for transporting prisoners and ambassadors. It was cold and silent. There were no windows, just a silver glow on the walls and a soft humming sound as the engines powered up. Valera sat quietly inside. Her wrists were no longer chained, but her heart was. She held her knees close to her chest. Every horror story she had heard about humans filled her mind. They have no honor. They smell like metal. They only want war. She wondered if the human she would meet would be old and cruel. Would he be rich? Would he own other alien brides? Would he even speak her language? She looked at her reflection in the glass. Her eyes were red from crying. Her long white hair was messy. Her shoulders shook. She was a princess, but now she felt like a prisoner. Suddenly the pod shook. It entered a jump gate, flashing through hyperspace. Her stomach turned. The next time it would stop, she would be on human land. Valera closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "I will not beg. I will not cry in front of him. I will be silent. I will be nothing." On the other side of the galaxy, on a peaceful green planet with soft winds and clear skies, a human man named Eli was cleaning the porch of his small home. He didn't wear armor or carry weapons. He wore a simple shirt and pants. His hands were rough from work, but his eyes were kind. A call came through his communicator. "The bride has been approved," a voice said. "She is on her way." Eli looked down, unsure. He had never asked for a bride. He had never wanted one. But the human government said it was a way to keep peace. A gift. A thank you from the alien council for something he had done long. He sighed, looked up at the sky and whispered, "Let's hope she doesn't hate me." Back inside the pod, Valera felt it slowing down. The hum grew quiet. Her time had come. The doors opened with a soft hiss. Warm air touched her skin. She stepped out, shaking, her legs weak. She was ready to see a monster, a beast. Instead, she saw Eli. He was standing at a distance, no weapons, no chains, just a small flower in his hand, and a nervous smile. Valera's breath caught. She wasn't sure what she expected, but it definitely wasn't this. Valera stood still at the edge of the landing platform. The air smelled strange, clean but full of scents she couldn't name. Her eyes blinked fast as she tried to adjust to the bright sky. It wasn't like her planet. This place had two suns, soft grass under her feet and birds that sang like laughter, but her heart was not calm. The human was still standing there. Eli. He looked normal, not like the ugly warriors her people described. He had short, messy hair, strong arms, and warm brown eyes. In one hand he held a flower. It was small and yellow. Was this some kind of trick? Valera lowered her eyes and waited for the command. But he didn't give any. Instead, Eli stepped forward slowly and offered the flower to her. "I know this isn't the kind of welcome you were expecting," he said gently. "But I thought maybe a gift would help." She looked up, confused. No guards, no collar, no translator machine. He spoke her language perfectly. Valera didn't take the flower. She simply asked, "Where is the cage?" Eli blinked. "Cage?" "Yes. The place where you'll keep me." Eli's face turned serious. "You're not a prisoner." "But I am a debt," she replied quietly. "That makes me a tool, a thing, a cost." Eli shook his head. "You're a guest. You're free." Valera didn't believe him. No one gives away something so expensive and just calls it freedom. Eli led her to a small house surrounded by trees. It wasn't a castle. It wasn't even rich-looking. But it was clean, quiet, and smelled like bread. She walked behind him, scanning everything, no cameras, no servants, no guards. Inside the house there was a soft carpet, a wooden table, and books. So many books. "This room is yours," Eli said, opening a door. It was small but warm. A bed, a shelf, and a window with flowers outside. Valera stood frozen in the doorway. "You can rest," he said kindly. "I'll cook something." She nodded slowly, still not trusting him. Her hands were tight at her sides. She didn't know where to sit, so she stood staring out the window. From behind the wall she could hear him in the kitchen. No chains, no threats, only quiet. And a soft sound of music playing from an old speaker. That night, Valera couldn't sleep. She sat at the edge of the bed, her back straight, her eyes watching the door. What kind of human was he? What was his real plan? Was he just waiting to see how much she would obey before revealing his true face? At midnight, she got up. She tiptoed through the hallway. She found Eli sleeping on the couch, his blanket falling off, one arm under his head. He looked peaceful. There was no weapon near him, no locked doors. Valera could have run away. But where would she go? She walked into the kitchen, opened the cabinet, took a piece of fruit. She bit into it slowly. Then she looked out the window, for the first time since she left home. She felt a tiny breath of peace. The next morning, Eli was already outside, fixing the fence. Valera stepped out, not saying a word. He looked up. "Sleep okay?" She didn't answer. He stood up, wiping sweat from his brow. "I'm not a soldier. I'm just a builder. I helped rebuild one of their damaged stations once. That's why they offered you. I never asked for this." Valera stared at him. "Then why did you accept?" Eli paused. "Because if I had said no, someone else might have received you. Someone who saw you as a prize." Valera's breath caught. She didn't know what to say. "I thought," he added, "maybe I could protect you, until you decide where you want to go." That night, Valera sat by the fireplace. She spoke for the first time without fear in her voice. "What happens if I stay?" Eli looked at her. "Then you stay. As a person, not property." Valera whispered. "And what happens if I leave?" "I'll still walk you to the gate." She was quiet. Then softly she asked, "Why are you kind?" Eli smiled. "Because someone once saved me. I was alone. Cold. A stranger gave me soup and a coat. He said, 'When you have the chance, be the coat for someone else.'" Valera didn't speak again. But when she returned to her room, she left the door open just a little. Not out of fear, but maybe out of hope. 3 days passed. Valera woke up early every morning, but not from fear anymore. The air smelled different on this human planet, fresh like water after rain. Her dreams were still filled with memories of her home, her mother's crying, the cold tribunal, the ship that brought her here. But something had started to change. She didn't feel like a prisoner, not yet like a guest either, somewhere in between. That morning, Eli was working in the garden. His sleeves were rolled up, sweat lined his forehead. He hummed a song that had no words, just a soft melody. Valera watched from the window. She didn't understand him. He had the right to own her. His government had accepted her as payment. He could have used her, married her by force, sold her even. But instead he gave her a room, made her food, and spoke to her like an equal. It made no sense. Was this a trap, or was he just different? Later, that afternoon, Valera stepped outside. Eli looked up and smiled like he always did, like her presence was a normal part of his life now. "Want to help?" he asked, holding a small spade. She hesitated. Back on her planet, noble daughters didn't dig soil. But after a moment, she walked over and took the tool. They worked quietly, side by side, planting bright blue flowers. Every few minutes, Eli would glance her way, not with desire, but with something softer. Respect. Valera's hands got dirty. She didn't complain. For once, her mind was not full of fear, until something strange happened. A shadow moved through the sky. A sleek black drone hovered above, blinking red. Valera stepped back. "What is that?" Eli frowned. "A border drone, from the alien side. They monitor everything." "Are they watching me?" she asked. "Maybe." Valera looked up. "They'll think I've disobeyed, that I'm too comfortable." Eli turned toward her. "You don't belong to anyone." She looked down. "You're wrong. I belong to a system that trades daughters for peace. That's all I am." "No," he said firmly. "You're more than what they decided, and you don't have to prove it to me." That evening, Valera walked around the small house. She found a shelf full of old books. Many were about space travel, philosophy, peace treaties, but one book caught her eye. The Human Choice. She opened it. Inside were notes. A human general had refused to destroy an alien city during war, even when ordered. He was punished, called a traitor, but later that same city saved Earth from destruction. She kept reading. Line after line, the message was clear. Kindness wasn't weakness. It was power. At dinner, she asked Eli, "Why didn't you marry anyone before?" He looked surprised by the question. Then he replied, "Because I was always the quiet one. I never wanted to conquer. I only wanted to build." Valera nodded slowly. "And now you've been given a bride who comes from a world that conquers everything." He chuckled lightly. "Maybe this time we can build something better together." For the first time, Valera smiled. It wasn't forced, it wasn't small, it was real. But that night, something dark returned. She was washing her hands when she saw a light flashing on the small communicator that Eli kept near the door. She stepped closer. The message was encrypted in a language she barely understood, but one word stood out. Inspection. She froze. Were they coming? Were they checking if she had been used? If she had submitted? Would they take her back if she was still untouched? Would they punish Eli for not claiming her? Her fingers trembled. She didn't know who to fear more. Her people, or the ones who had called this whole thing a gift. She went to Eli. He was sitting outside under the stars, drinking something warm. She sat beside him. Her voice was quiet. "What if they take me back?" Eli didn't answer right away. Then he looked at her and said, "Then I'll go with you." She blinked. "What?" "You heard me. I'll go with you. Wherever they take you." "Why?" "Because no one should face fear alone." Valera didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. She leaned her head against his shoulder. and for the first time since her world fell apart, she felt safe. The moon above the human colony glowed red that night. Valera couldn't sleep. She lay on her bed staring at the wooden ceiling above. The silence was loud. Her heart beat fast, faster than it should, not because of fear of Eli, but fear of herself. She was changing. She was starting to feel things she shouldn't. Safety, trust, hope. But those feelings were dangerous. They made people weak, and in her world, weakness was punished. At midnight, Valera rose from bed. She moved quietly through the hallway. She passed Eli's room. The door was slightly open. He was asleep, one arm across his chest, his breath slow and steady. She watched him for a moment, her chest tight. Then she looked away. She had made her decision. She would leave. Outside, the forest was dark and quiet. The wind moved through the trees like whispers. She didn't know where she was going, but anywhere was better than staying and waiting for her past to return. Her feet moved fast through the grass. Branches brushed against her skin. Her heart pounded with every step. Behind her, the house disappeared, and ahead of her, something moved. She stopped. A strange sound filled the air, like breathing, but heavier. Valera looked around. Nothing. Then, again, movement, a shadow between the trees, low to the ground, fast, watching. Her pulse jumped. She turned around. The path back was gone. She was surrounded by thick trees, shadows, and something she couldn't name. And then eyes. Two glowing yellow eyes stared at her from the darkness. She ran. Her feet crashed through the undergrowth. Vines whipped against her legs. She could hear the thing chasing her now, big, fast, hungry. Her breath was short. Her lungs burned, but she couldn't stop. Then she tripped. A root caught her foot, and she hit the ground hard. The creature snarled. It was behind her now. Close. She turned to face it. A tall, six-legged beast, skin like stone, teeth long like blades. A native predator of the forest called a Grom walker by the locals. Even armed soldiers feared them. She was going to die. She closed her eyes and whispered her mother's name. But then, a loud shout. Valera! Eli appeared like lightning, through the trees holding a glowing staff. He ran straight toward the beast without fear. The Grom walker growled, turning to face him. Eli swung the staff and struck the creature across the face. It roared. Valera gasped. No, she shouted, but Eli didn't stop. He swung again, and again. The creature bit into his shoulder. He screamed, but didn't fall. With his last strength, he pushed the glowing end of the staff into the beast's chest. The weapon flared bright, and the creature howled in pain, turning and crashing through the forest. Gone. Valera crawled over to Eli. He was on the ground, bleeding, his face pale. Why? She whispered, holding his head in her arms. Why? Did you come? He smiled weakly. You left the door open last night. I thought maybe that meant you trusted me. Tears filled her eyes. I was running away from everything, even from you. He coughed and looked into her eyes. And I still came for you. They stayed like that in the dirt and blood under the stars. Valera's hand shook as she held his wound. She whispered words of comfort, words she never knew she had inside her. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Later, back at the house, Eli rested in bed. Valera stayed beside him all night, watching his chest rise and fall. She didn't sleep. She didn't cry. But she made a promise in silence. She would never run from this again. Because someone who runs into danger for you isn't your enemy. He might just be your home. The morning sun rose slowly over Eli's home, spreading golden light across the trees. Birds sang like soft bells. But inside the house all was quiet. Eli still lay in bed, wrapped in bandages. His skin was pale, but his breathing was steady. Valera had stayed awake all night beside him, her hand resting near his. her eyes watching every movement. She no longer saw a stranger. She no longer saw a human. She saw someone who risked his life, not because of law or debt or duty, but because he cared. Later that morning, Eli opened his eyes. Valera's heart jumped. "You stayed," he whispered. She nodded. "You saved me." He smiled weakly. "Guess we're even now." Valera shook her head. "No. You gave me something I never had." "What's that?" She looked into his eyes. "Choice." The next day, Valera walked to the village square alone. It was her first time going without Eli. She stood in front of the Human Council. "I want to stay," she said, her voice clear. The council leader raised an eyebrow. "You understand you are not required to remain. Your debt has already been marked as resolved. The marriage was symbolic." Valera took a breath. "I know. That's why I choose it now, not as payment, but as a beginning." The room fell, silent. The council nodded. "Then let it be known. Valera of House Serene chooses to bond with Eli of Earth." Word spread quickly. The girl who was forced to marry had now chosen to do so freely. And the wedding was set. No royal halls. No gold towers, just the quiet forest, a hand-carved arch, and a circle of friends from both species. Valera wore a dress made of soft white vines, glowing slightly under the light of two suns. Eli, still limping, stood tall beside her, wearing a simple robe stitched by his neighbors. He looked at her like she was the only light in the world, and she smiled, no longer hiding her tears. They were no longer from fear. But just as the ceremony began, a ship thundered across the sky. It was dark, sharp, and shaped like a blade. Everyone turned. The ship landed with a loud hiss, and from it stepped an alien man in silver armor, tall, proud, and angry. Valera's face turned cold. Her heart dropped. It was Lord Tyvon, her once promised suitor. He stormed toward the ceremony. "What is this madness?" he roared. "You dare marry a human mongrel in the open, after your family was given to me in alliance?" Valera stepped forward. "I was not a gift to be passed between houses." "You were mine," Tyvon shouted. "By bond, by birthright." Eli moved in front of her, still weak, but unshaken. "She's not yours," Eli said. "Not now, not ever." The crowd watched in silence. Tyvon snarled, "Then fight me, human, if you want to keep her." Eli took a deep breath. "No." Tyvon laughed. "Coward." But then Eli added, "I don't need to fight to prove anything. She's not a trophy to be won." Valera stepped forward, raising her hand. "You want war, Tyvon? Then fight me, but you'll lose everything, even your honor." Tyvon's face twisted with rage. He lifted his arm, and a weapon formed from his sleeve. The crowd gasped, but before he could move, a blast struck the ground between them. Everyone turned. It was the Tribunal Skywatcher. A voice boomed from the hovering drone above. "Interference with a bonded union is a crime under the peace accord. Leave now or face judgment." Tyvon stared at Valera one last time. "You'll regret this." But she didn't flinch. She stood beside Eli, proud and strong. Tyvon turned and left. His ship vanished into the sky. The wedding continued. This time, with even more meaning. Valera spoke her vows with a steady voice. "I was once given away like an object, but I stand here now by my will, not as payment, not as debt, but as a woman who chooses." Eli held her hand. "And I vow," he said, "never to take what isn't freely given." Their kiss was soft, quiet, and full of light. A union not of force, but of freedom. The wedding was over, but peace didn't last long. 3 days after Valera and Eli took their vows, silence filled the forest once again. But this time, it was the silence before a storm. Birds vanished, the breeze stopped, and the trees stood, still like statues. Valera was in the garden, her fingers deep in the soil she had once feared to touch. She smiled to herself, thinking of how far she'd come, from a prisoner in a glass pod to a wife in a peaceful world. Then the ground trembled. A small vibration first, then more. She stood up. Eli stepped out of the house, already sensing something wrong. His hand rested on the old staff he had once used to save her. Then they heard it. A ship. Not one. 3. The skies darkened as Tyvon returned, this time not alone. He had brought warriors, tall, armored aliens in dark robes, eyes burning with rage, weapons drawn. Behind them, a machine hummed, a scanner glowing red and ready. Eli stepped in front of Valera. She tried to pull him back. "No, this is my fight." He looked at her with calm eyes. "Maybe, but I'm your shield now. Let me be that." Tyvon stepped forward. He didn't shout this time, his voice was calm but cruel. "You humiliated me. Before the tribunal. Before the galaxy. That cannot be allowed." Valera narrowed her eyes. "So you brought soldiers to punish a marriage?" Tyvon smiled. "I came to destroy a lie." He raised his hand, and the scanner activated. "What is that?" Valera asked. Eli answered before Tyvon could. "It's a purity scan. They're checking if we've bonded." Valera's face flushed. Tyvon grinned. "If the scan shows she has not joined with you fully, then by old law her claim is void. She returns to her promised bond, me." The crowd gasped. A cruel loophole. A dirty trick. Valera looked at Eli. He didn't flinch. "I told you, I would never take what's not freely given." Tyvon laughed. "And now that noble act will cost you everything." Valera stepped forward. "No," she said. "You don't get to decide what makes a marriage real." Tyvon motioned to his soldiers. "Scan her." But as they approached, Valera pulled a hidden blade from her robe, one she had never shown Eli before. The soldiers stopped. Eli turned to her in shock. "Where did you get that?" "My mother gave it to me," she said, "for the day I'd have to fight my own battles." Tyvon stepped forward. "You won't strike me." Valera looked him in the eyes. "No, but I won't let you take my life away again." She raised the blade. Just then, one of the soldiers lowered his weapon. "I will not fight her," he said. Another followed. "She is no prisoner. She chose." One by one, Tyvon's warriors stepped back, silent, ashamed. Tyvon looked around, furious. "Cowards. All of you." Eli stepped forward now. "You came here thinking we were weak. That kindness is weakness. That love is weakness." Tyvon pulled his own sword. "And it is." Then, without warning, he attacked. The fight was fast and brutal. Eli blocked the first strike with the metal end of his staff. Sparks flew. Valera shouted, but he pushed her back. "Stay safe." Tyvon struck again, this time cutting across Eli's side. Blood spilled. Eli fell to one knee but then rose again, using the staff to support himself. "You fight for pride," he said through gritted teeth. "I fight for love." With a twist of movement, Eli knocked Tyvon's blade from his hand. It flew into the dirt. Tyvon growled and rushed forward. Eli didn't attack. He stood still. Valera shouted, "Eli, move!" But he didn't. Tyvon grabbed him by the collar, lifted him slightly. "Why don't you fight?" Eli looked into his eyes and said, "Because this fight ended the moment you lost her heart." Tyvon's grip loosened. His strength, gone. He dropped Eli and took a step back. Then he fell to his knees, beaten not by fists but by truth. The scanner behind him beeped and powered down. The tribunal had seen everything through the drone above. A voice rang out. "The Union stands. The challenge is over. Stand down." The ships left quietly. Tyvon never looked back. Valera ran to Eli, blood on her hands as she held him again. "You didn't have to risk your life again," she whispered. "I did," he replied weakly, "because I would rather bleed with you than live without you." Days passed. Eli healed slowly, his wounds wrapped in soft white bandages. His body ached, but his heart felt light. He had not won with strength. He had not shouted, threatened, or conquered. He had stood his ground with love, and it was enough. Valera stayed by his side every moment. She crushed healing herbs in the mortar bowl. She fed him warm soup. And at night when he slept, she held his hand gently, afraid to let go. She had once been given away like property. Now she stayed by choice. The tribunal sent a message across the stars. The union between Valera of House Serene and Eli of Earth shall be honored without question. Any further challenge will be seen as an act of war. People from both species watched the broadcast. Some were shocked, some were confused, but most were moved. An alien girl who should have lived in silence had raised her voice. A human man who had every right to command had chosen peace instead. Together, they had broken the old chain. A few weeks later, Valera stood on a hill overlooking the valley. Her white dress flowed in the wind. Beside her stood Eli, arm around her shoulders. Below, a gathering had formed. People from other colonies had come to listen. Valera was asked to speak. She had never spoken in public before, not without fear. But today, she stepped forward. She looked at the crowd, then up at the sky, then at Eli. I was born into a house of rules, she began, where names meant more than hearts, where duty came before desire, where silence was safer than truth. She took a breath. But I was given to a human. I feared him. I hated what he represented. I wanted to disappear. Her voice didn't shake. But then I saw. He didn't want to own me. He didn't want to use me. He simply wanted to know me. She smiled now, and in that quiet little house among simple flowers and warm soup I found something powerful. She paused, her voice soft. Freedom. Eli stepped up beside her and spoke next. I never asked for a bride, he said, but I was given someone who changed everything. She reminded me that no matter what law or title says, choice matters most. He turned to Valera. And I choose you. Every day. For every day we have left. The crowd stood still. Then someone clapped, then another. Then the whole valley filled with applause, not for royalty, not for wealth, but for the most human thing of all, love, freely chosen. Later that night, under the soft lights of the house, Valera sat near the fireplace with her head rested on his shoulder. Her hands were clean now, not from lack of work, but because she had lived enough to wear the stains away. Do you think they'll write stories about us? She asked with a smile. Eli looked at her. They already are. Somewhere far away. On a distant moon, a young alien girl read a report on a glowing tablet. Her eyes widened. She turned to her mother. Mom, did you hear about the human who didn't take his bride by force? The mother nodded. Yes, and the alien girl who taught him how to fight without war. The girl's eyes sparkled. I want to be like her. And somewhere else in a dark room, a bitter alien lord watched the same story broadcast across the stars. He turned off the screen and muttered, They've changed everything. And yes, they had. Valera planted a new tree behind the house. Eli helped, even with one arm still healing. They didn't need crowns. They didn't need a throne. They just needed soil and sunlight and each other. From two broken worlds, they had built one whole future. Together.